Welcome back. So we will continue our discussion on the poem Refugee Blues by W.H. Auden. And the speaker in this poem, he begins the poem by suggesting that there are 10 million people living in the city in which he had taken asylum in, but none of them are willing to accommodate them. So, in this poem, throughout the poem, what the poet is doing is that the poet is making us aware of the situation of a normal refugee who is trying to save themselves from the political persecution, and at the same time how coldly the host country are behaving, or the poet is making us understand the situation of being a refugee. A refugee is a person who had a country of his own, who had a family, who has their own family, their own wealth, they had everything in their life, but all of a sudden, because of one particular person or one particular ideology, they are completely rooted away from their homeland, and they cannot find out a position where they can, of a place where they can claim as their own. And the poet is, through this poem, the poet is bringing our attention to the various hindrances, difficulties a common refugee had to face have to face in their entire life. So, we talked about the meaning of the word refugee, and there is another word that is blues. So, what do you mean by blues? Blues is actually, the meaning of the word blues is a feeling of sadness or depression. That is the meaning of the word blues. But blues were actually a sad song which traditionally had 3 or 4 stanzas, and normally the slavish community or African American slaves used. So that is a type of poetry, type of song or type of poetry which was used to express their sadness, their experiences. So it's basically a sad story or sad song. So Refugee Blues, the meaning of the title, Refugee Blues is the problems or the sadness or the feeling of sadness or depression of being a refugee. That is the meaning of the title Refugee Blues. So I will just go through the poem, and we will read through the poem and we will have a discussion later. Say, the city has 10 million souls. Some are living in mansions, some are living in halls. Yet there is no place for us, my dear, yet there is no place for us. Once we had a country and we thought it fair. Look in the atlas and you will find it there. We cannot go there now, my dear, we cannot go there now. In the village churchyard there grows an old yew. Every spring it blossoms anew. All passports can't do that, my dear, all passports can't do that. The council banged the table and said, if you have got no passport, you are officially dead. But we are still alive, my dear, but we are still alive. Went to a committee, they offered me a chair, asked me politely to return next year. But where shall we go today, my dear, but where shall we go today? Came to a public meeting, the speaker got up and said, if we let them in, they will steal our daily bread. He was talking of you and me, my dear. He was talking of you and me. Thought I heard the thunder rumbling in the sky. It was Hitler over Europe saying they must die. Oh, we were in his mind, my dear. Oh, we were in his mind. So a poodle in a jacket fastened with a pin. So a door opened and a cat let in. But they were in German Jews, my dear, but they were in German Jews. Went down the harbour and stood upon the quay. Saw the fish swimming as if they were free. Only 10 feet away, my dear, only 10 feet away. Walked through a wood, saw the birds in the trees. They had no politicians and sang at their ease. They were in the human race, my dear, they were in the human race. Dreamed I saw a building with 1,000 floors, 1,000 windows and 1,000 doors. Not one of them was ours, my dear, not one of them was ours. Stood on a great plain in the falling snow. 10,000 soldiers marched to and fro, looking for you and me, my dear, looking for you and me. In the first stanza, the poet begins by painting a picture of a city. He's saying that the city has 10 million souls. Some are living in mansions, some are living in halls. Yet there is no place for us, my dear. Yet there is no place for us. So the very beginning lines of the poem itself brings about or makes the reader aware about the helplessness of the speaker and his or her beloved. And what is he saying? That there are 10 million people living in the city, but none of them are ready to accommodate us. And there are every type of people. People living in mansions are there, people who are living in pathetic conditions are there. But even if there is a heterogeneous group of people, so a large number of people are living there. So maybe we two of us cannot make much of a difference in that particular community if they are ready to accommodate us. But the poet or the speaker is very much aware, or the speaker is lamenting that even if in such a big city there is no place for us, and there is no place of us, yet there is no place of us. So this is something which acts as a refrain throughout the poem, wherein the actual condition, the plight of a refugee is very much picturized through these two lines. Their lament is very loud through these lines. And then in the second stanza, the poet is poet is bringing our attention back to his family, his life, a country which he belongs to. So he is giving us the entire picture. So he is not a person who doesn't have, he was not a gypsy or anything of that sort, who doesn't have a family or a house or a wealth or anything. But he had all these things, and he believed that the country in which he was living was his own country. But at one fine morning, one particular leader decided that, or a group of community decided that you do not belong to this country. So you no longer belong, or you no longer are a citizen of a nation. You have to flee from the country. Otherwise, you have to undergo the persecution which the leaders of the country, or the monarch, or the administration of the country had decided to take. So he's saying that he's thinking about his previous life, and he's saying that once we had a country and we thought it fair. Look in the atlas and you will find it there. We cannot go there now, my dear. We cannot go there now. So what is he saying? That we had a country, and the country is there in the atlas. The country is still there. It is still existing. Lots of people are living there. And that was the country which they believed to be their mother country. But the political situation has changed so much so that the speaker is convincing his companion that now the situation had changed and we cannot go there. in the village churchyard. So he's talking about his country in which he lived. So it can be, or apparently it can be the Germany. It can be Germany because that is where, because here we cannot understand that it was German. It is Germany. Later on in the coming stanzas we get to understand, but because in these lines, in the beginning lines, we don't get any idea regarding the nationality of the speaker. We do not get any idea regarding. Only thing we understand is that it is a refugee with his companion, and they are not being taken into some country and they are waiting there. That is in the first part. That is what we get to know. So he's talking about the country where he was born and brought up, and he's saying that in the village churchyard there grows an old yew. Every spring it blossoms anew. Old passports can't do that, my dear. Old passports can't do that. The consul banged the table and said, "If you have got no passport, you are officially dead." But we are still alive, my dear. But we are still alive. So what is the significance of this line? So the poetess or the speaker is talking about the old churchyard where there is a yew tree and it blossoms every year. And he was very happy to be there. But he is sighing, or he is lamenting that like a yew tree which blossoms every year, our passports cannot be renewed every year very naturally. So in the next stanza we understand that why he is bringing into the situation of passport. So passport is important here because when you are in another country, when you are in your own country, and if you are not planning to move into another country, there is no need for having a passport because you have many other identity documents. But once you are out of your country, passport is your identity document, and if it is not active at that point of time, or if your passport is expired, technically you do not have an identity. That is a fact if you are in another country. So from these lines we understood that this particular speaker and his companions' passport is expired. It is expired, and who is the one who had to renew it? It is their own country, because apparently the country in which our speaker belonged to, they should they should renew it. And definitely when you are a refugee, you won't be very much acknowledged by your country in which you are living, and it's not very easy for you to renew your passport. And we understood that this particular person is waiting at some, maybe the border line where they are planning to enter into another country, and the officials of the host country, they are verifying their documents, and they are trying very hard to reject their proposal to enter the country. So unfortunately our speaker's passport is expired, and the official is saying that he's banged on the table and said, "If you have no passport, you are officially dead." So we cannot accept a dead person to our country, because we cannot do that. The rules don't accept it. But we are still alive, my dear. We are still alive. So these all are technicalities which the host country in which they have taken, or the country in which they have taken refuge, is trying to, or they are the excuses used by that particular country, so that they can reject this proposal of them, their application of entering into the country. But the speaker is saying that we know that even if we know that maybe the fact is that our passport is expired, but our passport is expired mainly because of many other socio-political conditions outside there. And they also, the people who are sitting there, they also know the fact that, okay, it's not easy for them to renew their passport in the country in which they belong to, because they are fleeing from that country. So it's not very easy to do the same. But these all are the technicalities the speaker is, or maybe the other countries are using, so that they need not have to let in this group of people, the group of refugees who are there. waiting for their approval to enter the country. Then what they did is that they went to a committee, because since their passport is expired, they cannot officially enter the other country. Then he went to a committee which we understood that it's something which is to help this particular community of people, because the earlier council banned his approach to these our speaker and his companion was not very good. He was rude to them. But here we are told that they went to a committee, maybe the welfare committee for these group of people. They went to a committee. They offered me a chair, asked me politely to return next year. But where shall we go today, my dear? Where shall we go today? So that is it. So we understood that maybe this committee is some help, something's called the help desk for the people who are the help desk for these refugees. And they were very polite, they understood the situation, they were sympathetic, or rather they are empathetic, but they also cannot help them, and saying that you are in waiting list, you have to wait one more year so that we can rectify your problem, or your problem can be solved. We can take into consideration your problem, because there are large number of people who are ahead then. But the thing is that we are not even sure whether we will survive for another 1 year, and whether we will be there to come there, whether we will be alive to come back after a year. So he's saying that we are not talking about a year, what happens after a year, but we are thinking about today, and where shall we go today. Then what they did is that they came to a public meeting. The speaker got up and said, if we let them in, they will steal our daily bread. He was talking of you and me, my dear. He was talking of you and me. So look into there. So these all are various images, incidents which are picturized, or which is placed here and there, so that the real situation, the real condition of being a refugee is very vividly portrayed. So they went into the official, maybe the consulate or whatever, the High Commission or wherever, but they were not ready to accept them. Then they went to the help desk which was intended to help them. They were not ready to accept them. Then they saw a public meeting, and we understood that these people were talking. So the main agenda, the main talk of the meeting is that if we let them in, they will steal our daily bread. So basically they are talking about, so the speaker understood that, because these were the group of refugees who were very prominent at that period of time. So if you let them in, the thing is that they are going to steal our food. And that was one of the propaganda which this anti-Semitic group of people always popularized, saying that if you let Jews into a community, they are so crooked, they are so brilliant, they are so intelligent that they will become the masters of the land. So nowadays also I think that type of propaganda is very popular, being that Jews are very rich and they will completely engulf the place in which they belong to with their intelligence or the money or the power which they have. So there was a rally or a meeting against accepting the Jews to this country, the country in which the speaker and his beloved is trying to get into. Thought I heard the thunder rumbling in the sky. It was Hitler over Europe saying, they must die. Oh, we were in his mind, my dear. Oh, we were in his mind. So it is only in these lines we understood that. We understood the ethnicity of the refugees here, wherein we all know that Hitler was against whom? It was the Jews. And whatever you have seen in the above incidents, whether it is in the passport office or whether it is in the help desk or in the public meeting, that Hitler's voice of they must die is rumbling. It is very much popular throughout Europe, and that is why people are not willing to take us, because this very anti-Semitism is very much popular at that point of time. Then like the speaker, we feel that the speaker understood that it's not very easy to be, it's not going to be easy work for the speaker and his companion to survive in this situation, in these conditions. Then the speaker is moving our attention to, in the earlier 3 stanzas or 4 stanzas, he was talking about human beings. Then he's bringing our attention to the common other animals or the other other beings in the ecosystem. And he's saying that the situation or the cultural scenario there, wherein he's bringing our attention to 2 different things. First one is, I saw a poodle in a jacket fastened with a pin. So a door opened and a cat let in. But they were in German Jews, my dear. They were in German Jews. So the situation of these German Jews was worse than animals, because poodle, you know that poodle is a very beautiful, sweet, little, cuddly lap dog. And a cat. So people traveling through that, a poodle is having a jacket, it has all its luxuries, they are living, a cat is living very happily there, because the poet or the speaker is saying that they have all these freedom mainly because they are not German Jews, because the situation of German Jews during this period or during the period of Hitler's rule was worse than that of animals. Then we went down the harbor and stood up the quay. You know that, the harbor. They stood upon the quay, saw the fish swimming as if they were free. Only 10 feet away, my dear, only 10 feet away. Walked through a wood, saw the birds in the trees. They had no politicians and sang at their ease. They were in human race, my dear. They were in human race. So the poet talked about lapdog and cats. Then he started to talk about the animals which are not pet animals, who are having a free life, bringing into the examples of the fish swimming in the quay, or the birds which are happily singing in the trees, in the woods. They can do whatever they want to do, because so basically the poet is bringing or questioning the word humanitarianism or humanism, because the so-called people who thinks or who believes in so-called humanism and brutality is considered to be beastliness, or brutality is considered to be a negative thing. But the so-called human beings, the people who propagate the species who propagate the so-called humanism is actually a farce. Actually, it is a farce. The speaker is questioning that attitude, because he is saying that maybe these animals, the wild animals, the fishes, or all the other species together, we consider them to be brutes, but they are better than the so-called civilized human beings, because the animals need not have to think about the borders or their nationality or anything. They can live happily without breaking any laws, because no one will question a bird flying from one country to another, a fish moving from one ocean to another, because they are better than the so-called civilized human beings. So this is basically a question in the so-called humanism of the human species. Walked through a wood and saw the birds in the trees. They had no politicians. So that is significant there. They had no politicians and sang their ease. So that is what the poet or the speaker is saying, that animals are much, much better than the so-called hypocrites, or the hypocrites known as the hypocrisy, because animals do not have this thing called hypocrisy. They live at ease and they are happily living because they were in human race. My dear, they were in the human race, because the most dangerous of the species is human beings, no doubt about it. And the speaker is underlying the fact that a world without human beings is a much better place to live in. Dreamed, I saw a building with 1,000 floors, 1,000 windows, and 1,000 doors. Not one of them was ours. My dear, not one of them was ours. So he's saying that he was dreaming about a building with 1,000 floors and 1,000 windows and 1,000 doors, but none of them was ours. So basically, this building with 1,000 doors, it actually represents the entire humanity, the entire world, wherein the speaker feels that we do not have any place to live in this particular world, even if there are lots of resources or amenities here, but we Jews, our situation is so worse that we are not welcomed in any of this situation. And stood on a great plain in the falling snow. 10,000 soldiers marched to and fro, looking for you and me, my dear, looking for you and me. So the last stanza is so much a haunting, or the poem ends in a haunting note, we have to say that, because the speaker is painting an image of a very big field, wherein 10,000 soldiers are marching together looking for even a single Jewish refugee, so that they can be persecuted. So that is why the poem ends in a very haunting note, wherein the reader will feel that the situation of our speaker, maybe the very next moment, these people will be persecuted. They won't be, they won't be easily persecuted. You know about concentration camp and the Holocaust and all these things, and they have to understand. They have to undergo all these things. So that is how the poem ends. So basically, what is the final, or what are the major themes which is discussed, and or major themes which you can see in the poem? The poem major themes are, when you talk about the themes in the poem, the most important theme is anti-Semitism itself, as we have already discussed about it in detail. That is hatred towards the Jewish community, and as a result of this, this anti-Semitism, the entire poem take place, because the hatred towards the Jewish community. And the next one is loneliness and exile. So the second theme of loneliness and exile is actually an outcome of this anti-Semitic attitude of the people who were supporting supporting Hitler and his group of people. And in a place, because in the poem itself we are seeing that we are in a city where there are 10 million of people, millions of people are living there, but these people, our speaker and his companion, is experiencing a feeling of loneliness or exile, where they are not being accepted in the society, and the loneliness which any refugee feels in an exile is very much evidently seen in this poem. And the major symbols, what you can see is that the symbols are the symbol of mansion, because in the very first stanza itself you can see that there are people who are living in mansions and in halls. So it represents it symbolizes the wealth and privilege where a citizen in a free country enjoys, and that is in contrast with the life of a people. And at that line itself you can see halls represent poverty, but even you are in mansion or in halls, you have the liberty to life, or liberty to live in a society. So these people, the refugees, they do not belong to these two communities. They do not belong to that wealthy community. They do not even belong to that, the poor group of people, because they are dead. They no longer significant. They are no longer significant there. Then in the coming lines you can see blossoms. Blossoms represents their life, a new life, represents a new life, but which is neglected, which the refugees do not have. So blossoms represents the new life, a new beginning, that is symbolic to that. Then you can see the symbol of passport. Passport is your identity. Passport is your identity, wherein this our speaker and his companion who do not have their own identity, they do not have an address of their own, they do not have an address proof wherein which they cannot prove their existence in this world. So passport represents the identity. Then we talk about a building with 1,000 floors. Building with 1,000 floors. It represents the entire world, or the entire world. Though it is a skyscraper, maybe the picture which comes into your mind is a skyscraper, but actually it represents the entire world in which human beings are inhabited, wherein they do not belong. The identity crisis of entire civilized world in which refugee is, and refugees are always marginalized. They are not even marginalized, they are not existing in the society. So in this poem what you can see is that these are the major themes and the major symbols which the poet had used to bring forth the pathetic conditions of refugees. And as we have already said, the poem was of a contemporary significance. It was, this problem of refugees began when the so-called civilization began. So it is from the time immemorial itself that the problem of refugees was always there. So the poem is of a contemporary significance, though this poem talks about the problems of Jewish community. It is significant even in the contemporary day, or the contemporary period, where the refugeeism is very much increasing day by day around the world. So this is all about the poem. Hope you have had a nice session. Thank you for listening. Bye.